We are back to MFG Cyclocross here in Seattle with the MFG Magnuson Park race. This one was huge. Unlike Fort Steilacoom, it is in Seattle itself, so the numbers for this race were absolutely massive. I want to say this Cat 4 field was like 70 guys, and the beginner men's field that started right behind us was nearly 100. So on the course right now between Cat 4, Clydesdale, and beginner men, there's probably 200 racers or so. And so knowing that, I knew that the start of this race was going to be super important. You can see this is one of the key course features here is this run-up. It is a little steeper than it looks, but it would probably be bikeable if it weren't for the planks that were on the ground there. They're not super high, but I don't know if even the Cat 1 Elite guys are hopping those things on the uphill. I don't think anybody's doing that here. It was also pretty slick, a tiny bit muddy, but it's a very, very not technical course. Aside from that one section, I think there's one other place where there's planks, and there's a couple of like tight turns and stuff, but in general, it's a really fast course. It's not a super technical course. I have also lost a ton of fitness since Fort Steilacoom. I had COVID a couple months ago, and have just even since recovering from that have not been biking nearly as much. So my fitness is crap. This is my first race back, and I kind of had no idea how I was going to do, but I'm out here joined by my brother Soren in the Cat 4 field, who you will see soon, and then our friends Matt and Pato were visiting us from out of town, and we're racing in the beginner men's field, so it was super fun. Like I said, huge race, super good energy out here, just hanging out and watching the races afterwards. This part was really fun. I feel like people were taking this super, super wide and kind of getting bogged down in the mud there, but it's quite possible to... because it's such a 180-degree corner, you can kind of just take it slower and get better traction there. That was not the best example of it. I had only pre-ridden the course once, but I have a little more success with that in later laps, if I remember correctly. I don't really know why, but for whatever reason, this section, which is just a straight section that's like a little bumpy, I really suffered on. You can see I lost some space to this guy, and here's Soren, my twin brother, undercutting me so hard that I almost had to unclip there. By the time I'm back on the gas, he's like 10 feet in front of me already. Kind of gave him shit for that after the race. But yeah, I don't know why I was struggling with that section so much on the first couple laps especially. I think folks were taking the grass, which was maybe a little less bumpy, and so they had a little better traction, even though it's kind of slick grass. The bummer is I really want to pass this guy. I'd like to stay on Soren's wheel, but you're really not going to pass anyone through this part of this section. It's kind of just super tight, and then at the end of this section coming out to the pavement, there's like a pretty significant bump that's probably hoppable, but also you just don't want to hit too hard at too much speed. So no one's going super, super fast through this. And there's the bump I'm talking about. And then there's this long stretch of pavement. A fun fact is actually the turn to the right here was on the course last year, and I fucking wiped out last year because it was slick from the rain. And I wasn't paying attention because it was the one part of the course that is on pavement, and I took that turn at 18 miles an hour or something and just absolutely wiped out into the grass, and felt really stupid to have my only crash in that race be on a section that's pavement. But that's cross. When you're doing a technical section, you're probably paying more attention. This part was pretty fun. You can see Soren didn't have the best start to this race. Like I said, the beginning is pretty important, especially in a field of this size. But he is already making up wheels and making up distance. He's obviously got crazy gas, a crazy engine. If you've seen any of the Seward Park videos with Soren, you'll know that he's super, super strong. And he, I believe, just before this race, like a week or two before this race, had run the Chicago Marathon and had done it in under 3 hours to qualify for Boston. So he is at basically peak fitness right now. I mean, he's super, super strong all the time, but he is, has just done one of his major goals for the year in the Chicago Marathon. So his aerobic endurance especially is super strong. But he doesn't have as much cyclocross experience. I think this might have actually been his first time ever doing a cross race. I'm pretty sure it was. So it's a pretty good course to start out on, honestly. Like I said earlier, it's super not technical. It's kind of just a power test. Man, this is something I really got to work on, is passing people. So I could tell that I had more speed than that guy, and I have more speed than this guy, clearly, for the last, 2 or 3 minutes there. But I just wasn't really able to find a spot where I felt totally confident passing. And I think I mentioned that in my Steilacoon video. It's just something I really, really got to work on. Maybe I got to start undercutting people like Soren did to me. This is the other slightly technical section here, is that they call it a beach. It's really just a little like rock area. And the thing about that is if you go in it alone, it's pretty easy, honestly. But later in this race, as you'll see, I think, there's a part where a dude wipes out right in front of me, and so I'm forced to unclip and carry my bike through that, which felt pretty stupid. But that's the other main sort of technical feature, which is not really that much of a feature. And man, you can see Soren is really just powering ahead. He's a couple wheels in front of me already. I want to say in this race so like I said, he didn't have a super strong start, but he basically was making up wheels the entire race, with the one exception of right at the end of the race, in the last corner of the last lap, he he wiped out and lost, I want to say, like 3 places. Like he was in 4th and he ended up finishing 6th. So he was pretty bummed out about that, but it's his first cyclocross race. You're bound to have some kind of slip, and finishing 6th in a field this absolutely huge is still pretty damn impressive, if you ask me, for your first race. I don't know if you could really hear that in the video, but this was a really funny moment in the race itself. We went by. This is really frustrating, getting passed on the frickin' pavement while doing like 350, 400 watts. That really bummed me out. But anyway, while I was going by the announcers, I had heard them, when Soren went by, say, "Oh, that's Skylar Schwendeman," and I think they'd maybe just seen Schwendeman and Taco Time. And then when I went by, they said, "Or is that Skylar Schwendeman?" I don't think Soren heard that, but I got a little kick out of it when that happened. This is definitely the part of the race that I was starting to suffer, and I kind of knew that, after COVID, my fitness is crap, like I said, and I knew I was going to still have an okay little punch, for the first 5 or 10 minutes, and I had an okay first lap. I think I'm in like 12th or 13th place at the end of that first lap. But right here, my heart rate is fully in the red, in the 180s, and I was like, okay, I gotta dial it back. This is gonna be a long race. I got 4 laps left. I think it was a 5-lap race, and so, well, it's frustrating to be getting passed by these guys, and I definitely should have tried to hop on that guy's wheel, especially on this descent. That was kind of stupid of me. I was focused on getting a tiny bit of recovery in on the descent, and just trying to think about what my pacing was going to be for the rest of the race, and trying to make sure that, you know, I could finish it out, and could finish it out without blowing up entirely, which I actually think I did okay on the first lap. Well, I'll actually just throw my lap times up on screen real quick here. So I was reasonably consistent. Obviously, my first lap was better than the rest. I get passed by so many people on the second lap, which was pretty demoralizing. I obviously have already had like 3 or 4 guys pass me, but it looks like I had 11 dudes pass me on this second lap, which I think contributed to me really feeling like I was going slow. Another wipeout from the dude right in front of me. That made me take this a little wider than I would have liked to and end up in the mud there for a second, which, as I was talking about earlier, is that really slick area that you kind of don't want to go into on that corner. But honestly, looking at it now, my lap time being 13 seconds higher than lap 1. Lap 1 itself there is actually lap 0. It's from the start line to the banner, basically. Because we start before the gate that captures your chips. Obviously, we didn't do an 11-second lap. But I was reasonably consistent. Lap 4 and 5 were my slowest. Lap 5 in particular, I was actually kind of trying to take it easy because I was really hurting by that point. And I was thinking, you know, how much can I hold in the tank so that I can really go hard on lap 5. Which, as I said, is actually lap 6. So on lap 5, I did a little better on that final lap, 8:34. Obviously not super close to my first lap time, but reasonably consistent spread here. You know, I managed to not totally blow up. But like I said, it's pretty demoralizing to have a bunch of dudes pass you. As they have already on this lap, and I think will continue to do so. I think I have a couple more dudes pass me. Anyway, I will take a little break from the audio here and just let the video play. This section's pretty fun. It's kind of lumpy here on the back half of the course, which is not so much difficult, but really kind of a pain on the hands and the wrists. But the section of the course that we're about to go on to, this really windy, twisty section, is just really fun. It's, like I said, it's slick. It's the most technical this course is going to get. It's just not a technical course. So having a section where you know, actually have to focus on your handling a little more is pretty fun. So I think I had to put a foot down there and give it just one push. That's kind of what I was talking about earlier. That dude didn't crash, but when you have someone going into that little rocky section in front of you really slow, you don't know how long they're going to take to clear the section, and so it's a lot harder to come in with speed. And if you don't come into that with speed, you have to unclip, basically. So that was kind of unfortunate. In retrospect, watching this back now, definitely could have come into that a little harder. He was reasonably in front of me, but I definitely had a moment there where I was like, shit, how long is it going to take for this dude to get out of here? Is he going to have to put a foot down? Because if he has to put a foot down, then I have to put a foot down no matter what. I gotta learn to bunny hop barriers. It's just one of those things that I have never really tried to do, and I don't want to try for the first time in an actual race. But especially those barriers were so damn low, you could just pop your front wheel over it and would totally be fine. I could do it. I don't know how much time doing it that way would actually save, but it's something I need to learn at some point. And here's my one mini crash in this race. Not really a crash. I think I was still clipped in with one foot, but I just sort of skidded out with my rear wheel in the mud there. Funny enough, I actually think that is where Soren crashed on the last lap of the race and had two guys go by him. As you can see, it's literally like 100 meters or so from the finish line. It's literally the last turn that you could crash in before the finish for the race. So that's a bummer for Soren. But I thought it was funny because when he told me about it after the race, I was like, hey, that was the only place that I slid out too. So this always happens. I'm pretty sure that the grade meter in the bottom right of the screen there, that percentile, lags behind by a couple seconds. I don't know why that meter always lags behind, but you could see that run up maxes out at like 14% and then flattens off near the top where everyone is sort of getting back on their bikes. So that really bummed me out because, again, I had to put a foot down. That actually really helped this dude because he was able to get back on the gas before I was. And he got a little gap there. But that's what happens. You know, he was behind a rider who was taking that section slower. He had to put a foot down, so I had to put a foot down. You know, that's the only thing that really is difficult about that section is who is around you. I remember thinking in the race that what that guy just did was kind of a stylish move going up the bank there, but I really don't think it's necessary. I think you're kind of just creating a tiny little bump for yourself that you don't really need to have hit, and you don't need to take that corner that wide. But on the other hand, hey, it worked out for him. He's you know, a good amount ahead of me at this point, so you know, to each their own. Absolutely loving this dude, crushing the course on a bike with a rack. Very, very, very cool. But I don't really want to be stuck behind a slower rider. Actually, being behind him right there for those two little divots already kind of cost me some speed. Take this corner a little bit slower than the last time because I'm like, I don't want to skid out here again. Spoiler alert, it doesn't happen another time. But you know, on the lap after a little slip, it's you know, kind of readjusting to what that corner should feel like. Really like being in someone's draft for this section, but we just weren't quite going the speed that I was hoping to. I was hoping he was really going to hammer that section. I could just sit in on his draft for a minute. But, you know, still get a fair amount of recovery on that section that you wouldn't otherwise, which is nice, especially going into this fucking hill. Because this was the point at which that run-up is definitely starting to hurt. But lap 4 now, I want to say this is. So this is the second to last lap. This is the point at which I was really thinking, all right, I gotta start to pace myself a little because I want to be able to really hammer it on the last lap. So I gotta keep something in the tank, even if there's maybe some dudes passing me here. So this was my slowest lap, I believe. I actually, man, for a second I considered pulling over and checking on that dude because he was definitely down for a minute there, but I kind of just wanted an excuse at that point, and also I was like, all right, there's a couple of bystanders pretty close to him on either side there, so I'm just gonna let them take care of that. But didn't like getting passed by this Mercedes-Benz rider, I believe, in the red jersey there. And I actually think, even though this was my slowest lap, I think I'm able to make a couple passes this lap. absolute respect to riders like that, who, you know, he's riding in a different field, and he's taking that section a little slower, and he's aware of my presence, so he, you know, tells me where he wants me to pass, and knows that I'm there passing him. Super props to that. That's always really, really, really helpful. And he's not racing against me anyway. He's in the Clydesdale race, so, you know, doesn't exactly lose him anything. But man, this booger kid just chopped me exactly where Soren passed me, and instantly has a little gap on me. These kids, man, have some really good, especially late in the race. They are just super, super strong with that aerobic engine that they've got. Constantly impressed by the booger kids from the Cat 4 race to the men's elite. They're super strong. It's an awfully nice dude to yell, "Get in my draft" on this section. Does inspire a spike of power out of me for sure. I always think that's funny because it's a super nice thing to do. It also is a strong sign that you're feeling like you're very, very confident. You're feeling like you definitely have, you know, the ability to beat the guy that you're asking to get in your draft there, which is funny.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. Oh my god is right. Run-ups are brutal. I was like walking up that section by this point. That was definitely the slowest I went through that section. And that can definitely be a difference maker at this point in the race. I am not a runner, charitably. And so those sections are always kind of a weakness for me, especially because, you know, like I mentioned earlier, my fitness is crap. So that's going to be a really high like heart rate section. You're really pushing it up through there, especially after pushing on the flat on the pavement. So, you know, just not my strongest section at this point at the end of the race. I was definitely hurting at this point, but like I said, on the last lap, I also saved some energy for sure. Because I really wanted to make sure that I could hammer it on this lap, and so I'm, you know, already on this section. We're pretty early in the lap, but on this just gravel section, I'm you know, trying to hit it as hard as I feel like I reasonably can, even though there's like more than 5 minutes left in the lap here. And I have the luxury of taking that corner exactly how I want to, which is, you know, obviously that normally wouldn't be the racing line, what I just did. I had to basically, you know, wipe all my speed to go there, but I ended up not having to cross the mud twice, and so I feel like the traction that I gained there was probably worth it, even though, like I said, I had to scrub all my speed off going into that tight corner at the bottom of the hill. And left is just about all that I have left in the tank at this point to communicate with riders that I'm passing. This is also, by this point, I definitely figured out being in the mud here is not the play. So that was definitely a little better through that section than I have been previously. But that being said, turning that corner, I also see these guys on my heels, which is a pretty good motivation for the last lap. You know, you obviously don't want to lose any more places on the last lap. So really going to try to hammer it for the rest of the lap here. Also, just to be clear, I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but this rider and the rider that I passed a minute ago there are both not in the same race as me. They are the rear of the beginner men's field. The beginner men have yellow numbers. The Cat 4 men, which is my field, have blue numbers, and then the Clydesdales have red numbers. So a couple times this race, I've either, you know, passed someone from the Clydesdale field, been passed by someone from the Clydesdale field, and those aren't necessarily the guys that I'm directly racing against, even though they are on the course at the same time. But that being said, a minute ago when I mentioned seeing those guys on my heels, those three guys that were on the other side of that turn that I took, I think all were in the not the beginner men, excuse me, the Cat 4 men's field. Man, I gotta work on braking less. I did not need to brake there in that last corner especially. And it's really annoying to hear it back with my super squeaky brakes that have been super squeaky since I got the bike for some reason. But it makes it very obvious when I'm watching footage like this. You know, you can tell exactly where I'm braking, and I can be like, hey, shouldn't have braked there. We'll work on that in the future. And I said it, and then going through that section, I really didn't have to brake. And probably didn't there either. So definitely really frustrating to watch, but also, you know, we're 45 minutes into a race at this point, or 40 minutes into a race at this point. You know, it's definitely a little bit challenging. This dude's just getting off for this section by this point. I actually ended up doing the same. I think I'd lost some speed because I wasn't sure if he was going to run into the section right in front of me. But that being said, being able to see some riders in front of me at this point is really nice. There's a section kind of at the beginning of, or the midpoint of this lap, where I just like couldn't see any riders in front of me, whether they were from my field or not. So having riders in front of me, even if they're the back half of the beginner men and not actually Cat 4 men, is a really good stick to dangle in front of yourself. You know, to have someone to be like, all right, I got to get up to this guy, I got to pass this guy, I got to keep moving. And pass another one of these beginner men's guys, and keep moving. That definitely looked like something got screwed up there. I think my shifter might have skipped a gear or something, because that was definitely kind of strange. So you can't really see it here, but there is another dude from the Cat 4 men's field, who I believe right here is basically right behind me. So I'm just going to sprint through to the line. Actually, that's not a terrible sprint after a race like this when I'm this out of shape. And come up to Soren on the right here, I believe, wherever the hell he is. He's here somewhere. But anyway, felt like crap after this race, but top half of a big field, so definitely not terrible for my first race back. And you can see my girlfriend painted my nails to match my bike. Anyway, thanks for watching. Have a good one.